My name is Karen Lynch Harley, and I'm here with all of you that are veterans from the Haliwa-Saponi tribe here in Hollister, North Carolina. What we're here today to do is to give you a chance as veterans to share your stories, experiences, feelings, and thoughts of your time in your service. The words will be shared so others will know your stories. So, first going to start off with getting everyone's information about who you are. If you could give us your name, your age, branch of service, rank, where you served, and why you joined the service would be nice. I have with me what's known as a wampum belt, and it's a belt that was used by our people on the woodland eastern side of the country to tell their stories. And also when you hold it, whoever holding it should be the one that is speaking. So this is just to kind of help everyone try to be mindful of whoever's talking. And if you want to talk, and if you really feel the need to talk, then just go like this, like, give me the belt. But it's not necessarily after we all identify ourselves that we have to go in an order. After that, you are free to speak when the mind suits you. So I'm going to start here on this side.
Thank you. My name is Michael Locklear. I retired 1 November 2020 after 30 years of the service. I was in the Army. I was in Special Operations. I retired as a Sergeant Major out of Fort Bragg. Most of my service was in Central and South America and in the Middle East. Obviously the Middle East for the last 10 years since, longer than that, but after 9/11, majority of my time was in the Middle East. And I'm 49 years old, and I retired from the Army Special Operations Command headquarters, and that's where I work at right now as a civilian. Thank you.
My name is Al Cooper. I was U.S. Army. I retired after 33 years total service. I was active duty Army, National Guard, and then back to active duty. I retired as an E7, and I was in, of course, Fort Jackson for basic training, from there to Massachusetts. And after training, I went to Germany for 2 years before coming back to the States and spending the rest of my time here. I was in Rocky Mountain National Guard for 8 years, and then went to the headquarters, the state headquarters for National Guard in Raleigh, active duty Guard service. So I spent most of my time right here in North Carolina serving.
I'm Mark Otis Richardson. I retired with 32 years active duty. I enlisted in 1986, went to Fort Rucker, Alabama. From there, went to Mainz-Fenton, Germany, then back to the West Coast to Fort Lewis, Washington. After 4 years, I joined the National Guard. I did 10 years as a traditional guardsman here in North Carolina with 1st and 130th. Got hired on full-time, went back on active duty, finished out my remaining time on there, and that's where I retired from 1st and 130th. Been on 2 deployments, one to Iraq, one to Afghanistan, and it's been an interesting ride. Never thought I'd see it out that long, but enjoyed every minute of it.
My name is Massaja Thomas Richardson, born January 24th of 1929. Went into service in 1946. War was ended in 1945 in August, and I had to beat the deadline. The war was over by September or December of 1946. So I said, Mama, let me in. I'm only 17 years old. Let me in. I get full benefit of the GI Bill. And as I went in, I went in and I wanted to be a paratrooper. So I went through my paratrooper training in Fort Benning, and then I was shipped over to Japan where the evidence of the war was really pitiful. the Japanese soldiers were running around grabbing cigarette butts in their old uniforms and everything else. And I spent 2 years in Japan as with the 11th Airborne up in the northern island of Hokkaido, Japan. And after that service, I came back into regular life as far as no more Army. I was discharged in 1949.
My name is Jewel McGhee Bissonette. I served with the U.S. Marine Corps from 1976 to 1997. Retired as a Chief Warrant Officer 3. Was stationed, went to boot camp in Parris Island, South Carolina. Went to San Diego, went to Okinawa. A couple tours in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And a couple tours in Okinawa, Japan. I was a personnel administration officer, and I basically went in because I was running the streets of Baltimore, and my mother had had enough of me, and I didn't know what else to do with myself. I was what I describe as a hot mess all the time. So that's how I wound up in, and was the best thing ever happened to me. There we go with that embarrassing information.
My name's Charles R. Lynch. I went in service in 1965 and was discharged in October of 1969. I had a short tour before 1962-63, but due to hardship in the family, they released me to come back and help get that squared away. Then I went back in 65. First I was stationed in Wadena, Minnesota. That's a peep and clear town. Time you peep out your car, you clear out of town in the boonies. And I left there and I ended up in Colorado Springs. Left there and went to Vietnam, spent a year in Vietnam. I was stationed way down south, other than water attacks and trying to sneak in on the Air Force base. About the biggest action I saw. And then when I returned, I got stationed at Bolin Air Force Base, detached to the Armed Forces Service down on the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. I call it Little Vietnam, so I saw as much action in Armed Forces Police as I did in Vietnam. And I was discharged in October 1969. I don't regret it a bit. As a matter of fact, it helped me determine life situations. Thank you.
My name is Dalton Lynch, and before I get started as far as, I just wanted to let you know that I'm basically standing on the shoulders of many veterans in our community, and I'd just like to call out just a few, and many of these people here are a relative or a distant relative in some form of way. My dad, he was in the Army. My Uncle Leon, Aubrey Leon Lynch, he was in the Army. You have Gilbert Lynch, he was also in the Army. And we have Harvey Green, he was in the Army also. And again, I didn't give my dad's name. My dad's name was Alonzo Miller Lynch. And I'm just standing on the shoulders of many veterans before me, and I'm very thankful for that. Again, my name is Dalton Lynch. I served in the U.S. Army. I was in there for 3 years. I didn't retire as many of the other ones, but I did see as a very important part and step into my life. I think it was the military's recruiter's mistake when they asked me how long did I wanted to sign up for. I told them 20 years, but he told me that I could only sign up for 3. And so I departed the military about 3 years later with heartbreak, coming back home to my loved one, Sonora Lynch, which I do not regret. But I do think the military was a very important aspect in my life. I was an Army medic. I went in the military in 85, October 1983, and I left home, kind of missing my wife and future wife, heading to the military, and I started off in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. They call it Lost in the Wood, Missouri. So started off there in Fort Leonard Wood, and I did my basic training there. Upon completing my basic training there, I departed to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, where I did my medical training there in the medical field. And so after I graduated from the military training there at Fort Sam Houston, I went for a year to Camp Casey, Korea. Camp Casey, Korea, I had a knack when I got over there of I guess I was lucky being in the right places, right times. The opening came for pharmacists. Didn't know anything about pharmacy whatsoever, but when asked could I do it, I said, yes, I can. And so once I got into that area, I just started asking questions of how do you do this, or what do you do there. So I finished up there in Camp Casey, Korea, spent some time along the DMZ, got my MGM Scout Award. I had a knack of brevity codes and things like that helped me out a whole lot just with memory. I left there and went to Fort Carson, Colorado, finishing up my career there. As a senior medic along the way, I was actually moving very quickly along the ranks when I was overseas because there was opportunity there. There was opportunity for more ranking that came quickly to me as when I was in a career. With 3 years, I think I had basically got to E4 within a little less than 10 months when I was over there, so that was moving along pretty quick. But I love my time there. If I would tell any young man today anything that he may, or a young woman today, is that the military is an excellent career. Many people just look at it and think that it's just Army fighting and all of that. But there's every job opportunity possibly in the military, from dentists to psychiatrists to carpenters to boat builders to many things along those lines. And I think the most of the Native people in the area are not really realizing that. There's areas and opportunities within the branches itself. And again, my name is Dalton Lynch, pharmacy medic in the military for 3 years, and surely enjoyed my time there.
Okay, so from here, what I want to do is just have each person, as they feel like they can think of something that they want to include, to just tell me a little something about what it was like serving as a Native American. Did you feel like you were accepted? Did you, as a Native American, or did you feel like people didn't accept you as that they thought you were something else? Did you know other Native Americans in the service? How did you feel when you saw another Native American in the service with you? Just anything that might give us a little information on that. I'll start this way, but just because I'm starting with Dalton doesn't mean that we have to go straight to Charles. It can be anyone. If you think of something and you want to add to it, just put your hand out for him to give it to you next.
Well, my idea and thought in the military, I feel like I was treated very well in the military. And I think why I felt very well along in the military there was that most veterans, most military people in the military, they always already have this idea of natives being strong and powerful and wise and along those ways. And in my time in the military, everybody, you know, like I said, they treated me well. There was never no question as to who I was or what I was or who my people were. They always knew that I was Indian, and they always respected me as Indian. And in this day and time, everybody, in my opinion, is really sensitive about a lot of things. Just throw this out the court, like Dr. Seuss these days. You know, people are beating up Dr. Seuss, but most people couldn't even read if it wasn't for Dr. Seuss, in my opinion. But I think in this day and time, a lot of people are really worried about stereotypes and things along those lines. When I came up in the military, it was very honorable and proud that when I would see another Native person, or if I see Native American imagery that would be used around. My unit was the 1st and 17th Buffaloes. And I took a picture and says, Mom, I'm in the 1st and 17th Buffaloes. Can you imagine that? An Indian person in the 1st and 17th Buffaloes. And I do know the history of the Buffalo Battalion and things along those lines. But to me, it was Indian imagery, and it was very powerful to me. A lot of my comrades and things, right away, they started calling me, Wahoo, off of Wahoo McDaniels, and things along those lines. And I didn't see it as offensive. You know, I seen it as, you know, something proud. Here's another Indian person being identified with another powerful Indian person, you know, in those lines. I have my military book here, and it has a picture of me standing in the pharmacy. And then it has what it has at the bottom. It has Wahoo McLynch. I didn't do that. I didn't tell them to write that in there, but these were the people that were putting the book together, and that stood out to them at that time that I was Indian, and that they wanted to reflect me in their eyes in a powerful way. So the time in the military, I think, from feathers to war bonnets, anything along those lines, the Indian coming up, you know, it was very powerful to me. And yes, I served with many Indians that were in there, and they felt the same way. And we always had that tight brotherhood among each other. You may could say even a little tighter, but our brotherhood with whites, blacks, Indians, Italians, whatever in the military, they seen me for who I was, and I respected them for who they were. And different cultures, coming from a cultural background, is so much more important. I think that when you're in Korea, you understand the Korean culture. When you're in Germany, you understand the German culture. And they only want to know something about you for you to share with them. So my time in the military, as far as was I treated well, and was I ever thought of to be someone different than what I wasn't? That never happened on my watch, and I wouldn't let it happen on my watch. But the military was definitely a plus for me, and I enjoyed every moment of it, along with my military brothers, all nations, red, yellow, black, and white, and it was powerful to me. Thank you.
Where I served at, it was a lot of places I was at. I was the only Indian there, and sometimes I got the feeling I had to prove myself to higher rank, and that's about the only thing I can recall that happened. But most of it we got along real well, and I let them know right away if they questioned me. Yeah, I'm an Indian. I'm one from North Carolina. Well, how many Indians in North Carolina? I say, the tribe I'm from is about 2,200 people. And, well, do you live on a reservation? No. Most of them never hear talk of an Indian tribe that did not live on a reservation. And other than that, I got along with everybody. Every now and then, some of the, being in the armed forces, I had to let them know what I was, and that hey, you what you are, and I'm what I am. You got to do what I got to say right now. But I enjoyed it. I call Washington D.C. Little Vietnam.
When I went in the Marine Corps in '76, there were very few female, especially American Indians. And again, the term was so much more American Indian back then. You didn't hear Native American, it was American Indian.
Right.
And I think for the most part, no one personally asked you what you were. They kind of, I think a lot of times assumed, especially when I was in San Diego, that I was Mexican. You know, I'd have Mexican Marines come up to me and try to talk to me in Spanish, and I would be like, I didn't even know how to say, I don't speak, you know, and that's what I'd say, you know, I'm American Indian, all I speak is English, and, you know, my tribe is from North Carolina, and like Charles said, they would often say, you know, do you live on a road, you know, what is the name of your tribe, and of course then they'd be like, never heard of that, and, you know, want to know, did you live on a reservation? So I think at times there was a lot of doubt about, you know, again, if you said you were American Indian and you weren't some Cherokee or whatever, one of the bigger name tribes, there was a question about whether you were or you weren't. But again, overall, I'd say the same thing. I was treated well. I treated everyone of whatever race well, and you know, again, I set out to prove. I went in as a real misfit and a troublemaker, and it really got my life back on track. And I set out to prove that, you know, I was the best, and that's I enlisted. I went in as a private and worked my way up to an E6, and then applied for the warrant officer program. So I was among warrant officers. I was one of 5 women to go to the basic school, they call it, at that time, and the only, again, American Indian woman. And I wound up getting the Steel Susie, first time they gave the Iron Mike to the most physically fit male, and gave out the first Steel Susie, and I took that honor. So I was very proud, and anybody that would ask me, a lot of times you just didn't get asked. I think a lot of them assumed I was Puerto Rican, or actually got asked was a Lebanese one time. I mean, they just, you know, couldn't quite figure out you know, where you're from. But I never felt discriminated against. I just felt like, people tried to figure out where you were from, and you did have some doubt when you told them, you know, what tribe you were from, and that you didn't live on a reservation. And again, the basic stereotypes that everybody thinks. But overall, best thing that ever happened to me, straightened out my life and put me on the right path.
When I was in the service, when a lot of you people are young, really young, and I come out of a place where apartheid was predominant in this country here. So when you went in the Army, and blacks went into the Black Army, and we had the White Army. So in those cases, and so I'm not in the White Army, but I'm a person that had color. So right away they want to know where you are. So that's where my American Indian came out and stuff like that. So those are the little different things that I had recognition of who I was in that same time, but yet and still I fell in the category of a non-white. So I did get some repercussions on, they didn't particularly care to be in a person of color. So, but other than that, I was treated well. And I just survived 3 years in the service, actually 2.5 years, because I never took a vacation, so I got out at 2.5 years. So as far as my Indianness and stuff like that, the people that I knew, they respected me and honored me, and they asked me questions about and stuff like. And one of the interesting things was a friend of mine, he was from the reservation, And they said, "Are you Indian?" He says, "Are you full blood?" And he says, "Nope, 1 pint short." He just gave a pint of blood. So the point being is that we all have a quantum blood, and that was one of the thing was always repeated on a tribe and the tribal grounds and stuff, like, what's your quantum heritage? And so this is another thing too that was asked too. So there's where you might get a little difference. But other than that, I was just another service in there. They respected me for my abilities and everything else, and I was highly competitive in the group. So I really enjoyed it. That's the best thing that could have happened to me for a 17-year-old to get off the streets and get out and get a basic and get the benefits of the GI Bill. And that was very, very noteworthy in my progress in going to college and getting my education and stuff like that. So my Indianness blended in with everybody else for a common purpose.
Can I ask you one question? How did that make you feel, knowing that they didn't want to put you in, they had basically a white area and a black area, but they didn't really have an area for you? So I think I know which area, what area did they put you in?
Oh, my area was with all the white other people.
Okay.
I was never with any blacks or anything else, and there was no criticism otherwise, except there was one southerner that didn't like me or whatnot, so I had to fight with him, and that was the confrontation with the officer and everything. But after that, he was disciplined because I was a fellow soldier, and you don't fight with fellow soldiers. But I was thoroughly accepted with everybody. That was only one time that had any problem. Other than that, I was just another guy out there serving like anybody else, and that was my tour of duty. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, I just wanted to respond, and it's not on my part. It's on my father's part, because when I went into service, I thought I was the only one in my family who had ever. I didn't know that anybody in my family had ever served in the service. And my father, again, I hope I don't shame him, but he did not tell us that he had been in the service at that time, because of what Mr. Tom talked about here. He, on his paperwork, if you were not white, you were colored. And his paperwork says colored. And that brought great shame to him that, again, there was no category for an American Indian. If you were fair enough, because I do have an uncle who was considered white. But for my father, he had to go in as colored. And that's how they housed him, and that's how he worked, and I think that's how he arrived at the job, the occupation that he had while he was in. So I just, that was definitely a very shameful experience to him, that he had to be classified as colored. And it was only after we moved here that he finally shared with us that he had served during World War II. We were just amazed that he had kept all of that, because he was so ashamed of the fact that he had to serve as colored.
Wasn't he in a couple branches?
Yeah, my father. Well, he was in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II, and he also, as soon as he got out of that, he served with the Merchant Marines and went and saw the after effects of World War II. Brought livestock to to France and overseas to try and get them started back up. So he shared so many wonderful stories with me since then. I'm so proud of him, and trying to get him to understand that, what they considered him did not negate, who he was, but that's how he felt. He felt like, he could not identify, or they would not allow him to be identified in the way that he considered himself to be. So that it's so it hurts me. It really does. It makes me very sad to know that he wasn't allowed to be what he considered himself to be. That he was placed in a category and had to serve in that way. Again, not that there's any shame to being black, but he did not consider himself to be that, and for that reason he kept it silent for so many years. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
To add to this story here, that after World War II, it was very interesting with all of the American soldiers that were buried over in Germany and Italy and other places that had big graveyards. The United States was so deeply into apartheid that people of color, they had to take other ships, but the Queen Mary or other ones were the white people. They were sent over to Europe, the white ones, and then all other people of color went on other ships to go to the graveyards. So we're not the only ones. If you had color to your skin and everything else. So at the same time, I'm only saying that we as the Native Americans, which is .02, was it 0.02 or 2.5? You said of American people, 2.9.
0.09.
Or 0.9. So it's interesting to see what all ethnic groups have been through, particularly the ones that have been in my age, and then there's still today even a residual that's being exhibited very clearly. Because some people, when you walk down the street, they don't want to look at your face because this is my country. But it's all of our country. And so these are some of the things, too, that I dare say it is hurtful, or if it's not hurtful, we can look at them and smile. You know, something's wrong with you. So I just wanted to add that to the American Indian population and all other people. We all coexist, and that's what America is made of. And so I want you to know that I, as an American Indian, I'm devoted to America and its purpose and everything else like that. I'm not separating, but have your own attitude, but I'm not going to pick up on it because you're my brothers and sisters.
Thank you. So, when I joined the military, I had no idea what I was doing. I actually walked into the recruiter and asked if they were hiring. The Air Force guy looked at me and he said, "No, you might want to try next door. I'm pretty sure they're hiring." That was the Marines. So when I asked that guy, he said, "No," he said, "try next door." That was the Navy. He was out to lunch. The Army guy was the last one. When I walked in, I said, "I've talked to these folks up here, and they said, you're the only one that's hiring." "Yes, we are." 32 years later, there I was. But when I went in looking for a steady job. I was going to college, getting paid to go to college, and then come back here and work half a day. And I just want a steady paycheck. So I walked in, asked were they hiring, and 2 weeks later, some 6.5 foot tall guy was yelling at me through a bus window. So I got asked a lot of times, what nationality are you? Because that's the way people used to approach you, and they would ask if they wanted to know what you were. What nationality are you? Never found it offensive. Native American. So, with that being said, okay, well, the next question, what tribe? I'm from the Haliwa-Saponi tribe. The what? I said, the Haliwa-Saponi tribe. And it took them a few times to get it right. And they said, where's that? So I tell them it's a little town, Hollister, North Carolina. And at that time, we were about 3,000 strong. They said, we never heard of it. Okay, not my fault. But it's there, it's real. So after that, it just, okay, I was just another soldier. And then somebody new would come up and you'd kind of have to start over. I did run into a couple instances where as soon as you tell them that you're Native American, they automatically want to call you chief. Hold up. Nope, not chief. Not chief, not going to be chief, don't want to be chief. You can call me Mark. That's my name. As I went on throughout my career, I've been in aviation the whole time, aircraft mechanic. And when I got to my first duty station, they said, everybody gets a nickname. I said, okay. They said, well, we're going to call you Rich. Sounds good to me. Probably never going to be there, but you can call me Rich all day long. So they called me Rich, short for Richardson. As I went on, more and more people, you know, they would see you, and some would look at you and say, are you Mexican? Do I sound Mexican? I'm pretty sure I'm not. But then you tell them the story. Nobody ever really had a real problem with it that I encountered. And in aviation, it's a small community anyway. And I didn't really run into any Native Americans in aviation until I got off active duty in 1990, and I joined the National Guard here in Raleigh. And then, for the longest time, I was the only one in that unit, and then we started getting a couple Lumbees in, and now there's several folks from the community here that are in the North Carolina National Guard from our tribe, and a bunch of Lumbees, and from other tribes throughout. But when I was on active duty with Big Army, I never run into any. Still only had one or two kind of negative interactions. One, I had a first lieutenant, that had a mannequin in his office, had a war bonnet on it, and he said, well, they call me war chief. I said, okay. I said, I'm good with that, sir. I said, but if you don't mind, how about sliding your mannequin back behind the door just a little bit? He said, why would I want to do that? I said, well, I'm Native American. I said, I'm from the Haliwa-Saponi tribe here in Holliston, North Carolina. I said, I understand because I'm in the military. I understand all of this, and I get it. I said, I got it. But if I didn't know anything about this organization and I walked in that door, I said, I might be led toward the perception that you may be poking a little fun at Indian people. I said, so, again, I understand what you got going on, but if you wouldn't mind, just move that kind of behind the door a little bit, so when people come in the main door, that's not the first thing they see. I said, either that or put a plaque up here that entails exactly what it is you have here. And it led to a small confrontation. So I said, well, I'll be honest with you, sir. I said, I'm not afraid of you. I said, even though I'm only an E5, I said, I'm not afraid of you. I said, and I respect you. I said, but as long as that thing is gone by 5 o'clock this evening, and I don't ever see it again in your doorway, I said, I won't start making phone calls. I said, because I'm pretty sure you don't know who I know, so we won't have to finish out this conversation. I said, that's all I'm asking. Just move it 2 foot behind your door, out of the direct line of sight of the public entrance. And I said, we'll be fine. Later on that evening, I walked past his office, and it was moved. So I went in his office. I said, hey, sir, I said, I just want to tell you, I appreciate that. I said, I hope there's no bad feelings between us. And he said, Rich, I'll tell you what. He said, I was thinking about that thing. He said, you made me mad as fire. I said, well, I'm sorry about that. He said, but the more I thought about it, I said, now, here's this E5 talking to me. I'm first lieutenant getting ready to be a captain. He said, I got thinking about that thing. He said, I think I'll go ahead and move it. just cause you asked me to, the way you did. I said, well, sir, I sure do appreciate it. And that guy ended up being my colonel on a deployment, did an outstanding job, and he actually retired as a one-star general. And the last time I saw him, he reminded me of that conversation. That was a little bit before he retired. So I never backed down from who I knew I was. I always stood up for it. If anybody asked me, I always tell them. And that's what I tell people today. You got to know who you are, where you come from, before you can tell somebody that story. I said, and don't just be afraid to come out and say, hey, I'm Indian, and I'm from here. I said, don't ever be afraid of that. Always stand up for who you are. I said, but you got to know who you are before you can do that. I said, and once you do that, I said, you won't have any trouble. And I've been some places while I was in the military. You walk in, and you hear, it's like the TV show, you hear the record scratch. Just, roar! And everybody turns around and looks at you. And you just tell the people, I just tell them, hey, just act like you got some sense and go about your own thing. I said, it'd be fine. I had a good time. Didn't have any trouble, none whatsoever. And to this day, I feel you can go about anywhere you want to, as long as you act like you got some sense and be fine. Nobody bother you. People come up, they want to know because you don't look like them. You don't look like people we see around here. So they just want to know who you are. Just tell them. It's up to them to make up their mind what they think about it. But the military was a great step for me, and I'm still in aviation. I wish more of our young folks around here would go that route. It's a pretty good field, but just got to be who you are and not afraid to tell anybody. And that's what my dad and my grandpa always told me. They said, Grandpa said, boy, you always tell them you Indian. Okay, I'll tell them, Grandpa. Sure will. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Dale had mentioned earlier about his dad and his uncles and relatives who were in the military and standing on their shoulders. But Dale, a lot of others came behind us being you and I, our age, I guess. I'm a little bit older than you, but Mark, I remember when he joined the service, and I think his mom called and talked to me and wanted me to talk to him, and that's what came out of it. So that happened a lot. But I only had really bad incidents. Both of them were when I was in Germany. And I'm going to let this thing go by here, so because I am hard of hearing too. But I want to tell you about the bad ones first, and then there was a lot of good ones. I had a lot of good times, got along well with a lot of people, different from me, enjoyed learning about where they were from and their lives and everything, and they did the same to me, when they found out I was native, and they just wanted to know where you're from and, what tribe and all of that. And of course, they never heard of Haliwa-Saponi and none of the other tribes in North Carolina. And that was one of the incidents that happened. I had an incident that happened at work when I was in Germany. And this black guy, he was just, set on telling me that I was black. I was an Indian. And we had quite the confrontation. We didn't quite fight there at work. But we got separated, and my supervisor straightened that out, and I never had any more problems with him. But one night we were in a restaurant and a place that served refreshments, and I had a white guy to do the same thing. He was from Tennessee. And now I kind of understand better, but he wanted to say the same thing, and we had to have somebody to separate us. But other than that, people ask a lot of questions, which was fine. I got to talk and tell them, And at that time, in the early 70s, I went in 72, and the Army had started this thing called the race relations class because minorities had been treated so bad in a lot of places and misunderstood. So they started having these race relation class, which you got to tell about yourself, everybody, and where you're from, and some of the things that bother you, or some of the things that were good. And you got to learn a lot about other cultures too. And people after that, wherever I was stationed, you know, they would, after class or whenever, they would come up and ask me more questions, which was fine. And they were learning. You know, it wasn't like I'm looking down on you, you're not who you say you are. They were just learning. But those were my two worst incidents. Another thing happened. I don't think it was an incident, but we were on the train in Germany going down south somewhere on vacation. And these two old ladies was on the train. Of course, they wanted to know where I was from, and they loved my accent. I still had a little bit then from North Carolina. But they said, you sure are a Jewish boy. You're a Jewish boy. I said, no, ma'am. She said, no, you don't understand. I know you from America and everything, but you're a Jewish boy. You know, your great-great-grandparents somewhere were Jewish. I said, no, I come out of the red dirt and rocks of North Carolina. But I did walk into a place one night down in Munich, Germany, and it wasn't a restaurant, but they had good refreshments. And I walked in there, and this lady looked me right in the face, and she'd say, "You're American Indian, aren't you?" And I said, "Gosh, you are so smart. You are so smart. I have been recognized for who I am." You never met me, have you? No, but I could just see it.
Am
I mean, she started, huh?
Am I wearing a sign?
Yeah. What is it? And she said, no, I could tell it. I could tell it right away. So we had a great conversation, and that was good. But other than that, I mean, I got along well with people and just enjoyed most of my time. But that's what really bothers me now with what is going on in our country, that this is still an issue of not being who you are and being put down for who you are. It should be happening here, 50 years later? It's still happening. So I'm hoping and praying that you know, we'll get past this and we can all be who we are. All of us are proud of who we are. I wouldn't want to be from anywhere else I can think of. And a lot like y'all, you know, I went in the military. I was kind of semi-bored, broke, and everything else, tired of riding up and down the same road 100 times every weekend. So, you know, I wanted to do something else with my life, and I got that opportunity. And even sitting around here today, we're still learning. I mean, Tom, you could have had your own army. You know, you had a black army, white army. You could have had your own Indian army.
You could have been in charge.
Yeah. And what you said was a Sassy Susan Award? A Seal Susan. Seal Susan, all right.
Iron Lake and the Steel Susan.
And I had never heard of that. That was great.
It was.
That was great.
Honor, I'll tell you what. And I was determined. It was between me and another girl. Again, it happened to be a white girl.
Yeah.
Long, tall.
Well, we're proud of you. Thank you.
It was, you know, had it just been running now,
yeah.
You know, but I could climb, I could do the obstacle course,
right.
I could do a lot of things. A lot of men couldn't, you know, confidence course.
Okay.
You know.
But I still got the belt, okay? Okay. But that's okay. Yeah, but, you know, it served me well. I served them well. They got their money's worth. I got a lot out of it. I grew up. You know, I had a good life, you know, here in North Carolina. I drove 30 years to Raleigh and back and forth so my family, we could stay here in the community. And but I worked at the state headquarters. Now, the guy that you mentioned, was this in North Carolina, the colonel?
That'd be Coates.
Huh?
That'd be Coates.
I know who it was. Yeah. But he didn't tell the story the same way. He said you came in his office and whooped his behind.
No.
Anyway.
I always reserve that card for the last option.
All right. Okay. But yeah, we had a lot of great opportunities, and I appreciated those opportunities, and it was an opportunity to grow and to grow, you know, get promoted and to do something else and to be in charge, you know. I never thought I'd be in charge. You know? I got to be in charge and you know, semi tell people what to do. But I had some good people. At one time I had 13 people working for me. And when I finished that, I said I was either going to open a daycare or a circus or a zoo or something like that. And I was in personnel too, Jill. But it was overall, it was a great experience, and I'm thankful for it, and even more thankful now every month when check time rolls around.
About the first.
Oh yeah. But other than those two incidents, otherwise, people were were very respectful. They wanted to know about it, and learn about it, because a lot of people didn't know there was Indians in North Carolina. All of y'all are gone. No, we're not. We're still here. We're still here, and we'll still be here for a very long time. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Most folks that had the problem was if they asked you where was your reservation. If you told them you live on a reservation, most folks didn't realize that all Indians don't live on a reservation.
Yeah, 1 acre reservation.
Well, I've been stationed. I came in the Army in 1990, and I've been stationed on Fort Bragg since '94. First, I went to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I was artillery as FDC, and then I switched over to become a Green Beret. And so I was with 7th Special Forces Group. So I've been on Bragg since '94. The reason I mention that is I'm half Lumbee and half Haliwa-Saponi. Well, the Locklear name and, Fort Bragg, everybody knows Locklears. Yep, so for the good and the bad. But I had another another Lumbee in my company, and there was 3 Lumbees in 7th Special Forces Group, and we were all good friends. We had some other Native Americans from different tribes, not North Carolina, but the 3 North Carolina Indians, I knew them, the other 2 guys. And so, but I've, my 30 years in the military, like I said, 26 of them has been in special operations. I'm a Green Beret, and I've never had really any problems. Most people think I'm Puerto Rican, but if you're on Bragg, then they're like, no, he's a Lumbee. So I have people answer for me, and I say, I'm Lumbee and Haliwa-Saponi. So I've been pretty blessed. Not pretty blessed. I've been really blessed. I was able to get my master's degree while I was in. No one in my family has ever got a bachelor. So I got a bachelor's from the University of Charleston, West Virginia. That's my undergrad, and I got my grad from the same school. My wife got her master's degree. My daughter graduates in May. She went to UNC Wilmington. Now she's going to UNC Pembroke for her master's. She graduates in May. My son is going to pre-law. But all that was the foundation, I think, was the example I showed my family and my wife that, just because we're Native Americans, we always strive for success in everything we do. And I think that's kind of what got my career, because in Green Beret, obviously, it's hard to become a Green Beret. And it's also, I'm Ranger qualified, so I went to Ranger school. But Special Operations, it has a history of Indians. That's, our cross arrows during World War II, the pre-CIA, the OSS, that was an arrowhead. That was their sign, because they were scouts. They went behind enemy lines. Indian scouts did that. So within Special Operations, the Native American lineage, it's well known and well documented. Even with Rogers Rangers, when he fought the French and Indian War, all that stuff was based off of his interactions with Native Americans. So within Special Operations, it's well known and it's well respected. So I was very fortunate to have that. As far as like any issues, I've never, out of my 30 years of active duty military, I don't never really recall anyone, having an issue with my, my heritage. I never had any discrimination. Not if it wasn't blatant and I didn't pay no attention. Maybe I was focused on something else, but I've never had any problems. And it's strange because, like, I've been really, I've excelled in my military career as an NCO, but you don't see a lot of kids joining the military. I mean, it's like my family, my brothers and sisters. I was born and raised in Maryland. My dad's a Korean War veteran. His brother was a World War II, Uncle Smith, and then my mom's brother was a Korean War. He was a POW in the Korean War and escaped. And not too people know that. And I didn't know about that until just about like 10 years ago, that he was a POW and held by the Chinese and escaped. So, but none of my nieces and nephews, no one's joined the military, and I don't know why. I find that kind of, it's a shame, because the military, I tell young people, because I talk to a lot of young people, being a senior NCO, the best thing you can do, you do your 4 years, and then you can go to college and you can excel and you can set the example. But, I just don't see it. I don't know why more Native Americans or younger people are joining the military, because I mean, it is a great start. It's a good foundation. It's like building a house, you know. It's a good foundation. You don't have to stay at that house, but you have that good foundation. You can take that somewhere else. So the military, they look back at the what the Native Americans did. They set an awesome standard, and especially for special operations. So like my shirt right here, free the oppressed, but to see the cross arrows, you know, those are for the scouts. And so.
Okay. All right, I just want to quickly have everyone finish up. If there's anything else you want to get out and let people know about your time in the military, how it affected your family while you were gone, if you missed them a lot, if your culture came into play while you were there, as far as did you do any kind of ceremonial stuff, listen to powwow music or anything like that? And one other thing is, do you feel that being Native helped you in your military life? I'm going to start with Mike, because I know that at one point that you were in different areas of countries, and they kind of used the fact that you fit into a lot of areas. Maybe you could just say how that actually helped the military.
So since 9/11, the war on terrorism has been, for special operations, it's been extremely painful. We've lost a lot of good, soldiers and sailors, Marines, you name it. It's been rough. And I wasn't home much because I did 5 trips to Afghanistan, 5 trips to Colombia and fighting the war on drugs. But in Afghanistan, just like they said, you thought you were Jewish. I could, once I threw on my Afghan garment with my body armor underneath, of course, but I could fit in as an Afghani. So what we would do early on, this was in 2002, we would send the vehicle, a Toyota Hilux, forward of our convoy, and they would say, hey, the Taliban would come to us and say, hey, the Americans are coming, they're behind you, get out of here, we're setting up an ambush. So what we'd do, we'd call back and let them know that they're going to set up an ambush, because they looked at us and they thought, I was, an Afghani, I was Pashtun, so I could get away with that. And so that was pretty unique, and that's how I blended in. So utilizing, my features, I was able to blend in quite a bit. Especially in South America, the same way. Most people think that you're Hispanic, most times Puerto Rican, but working down in Colombia, I was able to, gain a lot of intelligence just by the way I looked, and so that was kind of unique. So that's all I have.
Being Native, and like I said, I had a lot of friends, white and black, and but especially some of my white friends, when they wanted to look down on the Puerto Ricans and all the Latinos, they wanted to say about, they had names for them, and I just had the opportunity to get them corrected on that, because I felt, even though I didn't have their background, we were the same color, and I felt like if they were going to say that about them, what were they going to say about me behind my back? So I think I had the edge there to fix some things with some people, and I was thankful for that. Other than that, when I got the job in Raleigh, I had been in the Guard in Rocky Mount for 8 years and trying to get into the Active Guard Reserve program. And I went to work for a guy. I got hired by a guy, and I think I got hired because everybody thought he was the meanest person working in Raleigh, and nobody wanted to work for him. That's kind of the story, the backstory. But I didn't believe that. And even if he was, it was worth it for me to get that job and to be able to get my foot in the door. But it turns out that he was one of the greatest people that I could have ever worked for. He died young, 52, with a brain tumor, brain cancer. But he gave me the opportunity, and when I walked in there and went to work, he said, you can go. He was a chief warrant officer. He said, you can have my job one day. So you just keep working and like I said, doing what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. He said, you can have my job one day. And I didn't become a warrant officer, but I retired sergeant first class and was thankful for that, and I always look back on that. And he was just happened to be originally from South Carolina, was very familiar with the natives in South Carolina. So that probably gave me a little bit of an edge too, but it was a good trip. Yeah.
Well, the hardest part was deployment. And just to give you an example, my current wife and I had already talked about getting married, and we were going to get married later on in, August, September, October time frame when normal people get married. And I said, well, hey, it's Christmas. I said, I got to go by the office and work about a half a day. And I said, then we'll leave there and come on down to Hollister. So I'd been at work about 15 minutes, and she knew nothing about the military. None of her family was in the military for any extended time. So I'd been at work about 15 minutes, and my supervisor comes in. He says, hey, conference room, 5 minutes, everybody. I said, okay, well, this ain't good. So an hour later, I come back out, and my office was right next to the conference room there. So I asked my wife, I said, did you hear any of that? She said, no. I said, okay. I said, so I am going to be deployed for at least a year. We're going to have to either move up or postpone the marriage. She looks at me, she says, do what? I said, yeah. I said, I don't know how else to tell you. I said, so how about we just move it up? So hence, that deployment caused me to have to move it up. So got married in January, middle of January. Nobody gets married in January. So anyway, and that deployment left shortly after and ended up getting extended, which turned into about 18 months total deployment. So that being gone, it was really tough on her. It was tough on kids and everybody, and a lot of people don't understand that even though you've known somebody all your life, if you go 365 days without ever laying eyes on them, even though you can talk to them occasionally on the phones. This was back in 2002, 2003. When you actually come back, it's an adjustment, and it's a huge adjustment. And it can be somebody that you've known half your life, love them to death, and whole 9 yards. It's still an adjustment. And that's what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to the sacrifice, is things like that come into play. It's pretty tough, whether you're native or not. It's tough on everybody. You always hear about separation, divorces, and everything while soldiers are deployed, or a soldier gets deployed, come home, bank account's long gone, along with the wife or the husband. So that's pretty tough, and a lot of times I had to remind myself, hey, I can make it through this. I said, my dad was strong. I said, my grandparents are strong. My mom's strong. I said, I'll just rely on some of that to help get me through this, and it did. And I made it back. Second deployment, same thing. It's just starting over. They don't really get any easier. I guess you get more used to them, but that doesn't make it any easier. So
I just want to back up just a little bit. When I lived down here for 2 years in 1984 through 86, when I voted, there was no place for American Indian. There were from other races and everything else, but nothing for the American Indian. So at that time, I served with the Commission of Indian Affairs on that board in Raleigh. So I raised my hands several times, and I wasn't recognized. So I got a little provoked, and I did what comes naturally. I stood up and says, "I'll make a motion. We change the name of the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs to the Commission to Others," because that was the only place you could put. This is 1984. Yeah. And everything, thank God, is recorded, and it brought to some of the people's minds. They had Philippine, they had all the other ethnic groups. But we didn't become citizens of the United States until about 1922, 20-something like that. We weren't even citizens. So we've been left out a long time. So there's a residual bunch of us now today, educated. So I think it's time to the Indians that are left, that they're full blood and they're quantum, is to get some recognition that we are and we're here. Those genes were here before the white man came and took it all away. So I just wanted to bring that up to you, that when we get to the point where provoked, stand up for our genetical heritage. And that's about all I have to say on this. Yeah.
I'm just going to go back to, again, when I came in the military, I was running the streets of Baltimore, and I was really heading nowhere. And had I not come from two strong Native American parents, I always say, I don't know if y'all remember the show, Two Snaps Up? Well, I had two strong Native American parents. I had two snaps up when I came in the military. And I knew that they expected so much more of me than I had become. I was a year out of high school and I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do, but I knew that my parents had not raised me to be a nothing, to be in the streets, to be in jail, to get pregnant before I got married. There were things that they expected of me. And as Native Americans, again, I grew up in Maryland, like I said, but I always felt that strong pull to my Native American heritage because my parents kept all of those things alive. When we were in Maryland, my father would take us fishing. He'd take the boys hunting as soon as they could hold a rifle. We went apple. We were very in tune with nature, even though we were in the city. He would find a way to get us to the country. Either we were coming down here or we were going to find a way. But I really feel like when I went in the military, I was ready. I had no idea what I was getting to. I don't know who else had said that. I didn't know what to expect. I just knew I had to do something. It was a dead of winter. I'd gotten on my parents' last nerve. They had locked me out the house. I had nowhere else. I'd been fired from a hot dog stand. That's how bad it was. Okay, you can't get much lower than that. Standing out in the cold in Baltimore after you've had to turn in your hot dog cart, and your parents won't let you home. They done taken your key, and so I really do. They gave me. Somebody else talked about it earlier. They gave me the foundation that I needed. The military gave me the foundation, but they gave me the push. Once I was in there, I did not think I would make it. I had no intention. I signed up for 4 years. Men could sign up for 2 years in '76. Women couldn't. You had to go in a 4-year. And the reason I went to Marine Corps is because the Army guy was out at lunch. The Navy guy had alcohol in his breath. I didn't need no help with that. And the Marine Corps recruiter said, we could take you in 10 days. So I was like, I'm in. I called my mother and said, I just signed up for the Marine Corps, and can I come home? And she said, you can come home now. I tell you, the best thing that ever happened to me, and like so many of y'all had said, I wish they would encourage it more in this community especially. I wish they would encourage it more throughout the United States. Sometimes I almost wish they would come back with a mandatory, draft, a mandatory 2 years. I don't forever foresee that happening, but I do think that the youth in this community and Native Americans throughout the world, the country here, would encourage your children more, because it is a great start. Like, again, a number of y'all have said, I got my education because of the military. I went in as a private and wound up retiring as a Chief Warrant Officer 3. There was no way in my mind back in '76 that I ever thought I would accomplish the things that I have. To get a bachelor's degree, like some of you said, I was the only one in my family ever achieved a college degree. So I would just hope that whoever, that the youth that might watch this would see, what they can do, what can become, that there is a better light if this is all they have, or they feel like there's nowhere else to go, that this is a great start.
Well, as a strain on the family. When I left for going to Vietnam, my wife was 5 months pregnant, and my oldest child was 3 weeks old before I found out about it. So that was real tough, very tough on her and very tough on me. And we managed it, and I think it helped us in the long run to really enjoy our kids and what we've accomplished in life.
Well, I would like to say that for me, as far as things that affected me and made me strong through the military, was basically my parents and my elders. Many of you that know me sitting around the circle here know that my parents and my great-grandparents on each side, all the way back, has been very connected to the tribe. And a lot of times there's nothing else that my family really ever knows other than is tribal business, sitting around Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas, and we talk about tribal affairs and the affairs and well-being of the people. And growing up in this community, I grew up with my dad coming to the powwow grounds, helped cleaning up for powwow grounds, meeting all the elders, Mr. McGhee, and all the extended family all around the circle here. We know them very well. They're in our blood, and we're with them, standing with them. And I just wanted to say that these things helped me out through the military. Going in prior to the military, was connected that way, tribally, culturally, and knowing a lot of these veterans and things like that. That as a young man, I was singer. We were the Shallow Water Singers, and very well known throughout North Carolina, up and down the coast, singing at many powwows culturally and things along those lines, and unity conferences, and everywhere, North Carolina Unity Conference. We've always been in Indian business, and we just appreciate that. I appreciate that to my heart to this day. But going back to my memories in the military, what helped me out strong is, even when I went in the military, my community didn't leave me. I wrote letters, and I have had letters and sent letters. I wrote letters continuously, rigorously to all my community members. And it's not bragging, but thankful on the other end. At roll call, I will get anywhere from 6 to 20 letters a day from Miss Betty, your mom, Miss Betty Richardson Silver, Short Lunny, Miss Connie Heshpeth, and all these people. I would write them, and they would write me, my class members and things like that. So, they stayed with me the whole time. And so on the culture aspect part of it, that it was in me, and you're not really aware about how to handle things sometimes, that when I went in the military, I took my sage, I took my cedar, I took my tobacco, took my eagle feathers along with me, unknowingly. Willingly is part of me. But when I got over to Korea, I was going like, sometimes they would come around and have barrack inspections and all of this stuff like this. And I turn around, I was going like, I said, oh man, because some of my friends and military people in the medical profession there, a lot of times, some of them would do little illicit things. I never did. But they will have little illicit things, and somebody got busted over here, and says, got me to scratching my head. I was going like, I have sage, cedar, and tobacco in here. Are they going to misconstrue, some of the things that I have here that, that are traditionally and rightfully mine and rightfully so as a Native person to have these things. So I got to thinking about it, and I wasn't about to give up any and all that stuff. So what I did, I went straight to the first sergeant, and talked to first sergeant. Said, I need to talk to you about some things, cultural aspect, who I am, what we have, and I have here. I said, I'm willing in it. You're not fouling it out, all this stuff. I says, this is sage, cedar, and tobacco. This is my culture, my people. And I said, I want to make you aware that I have these things here, and that they're mine rightfully, religiously, and I just wanted to touch bases with you, that that I have this, and where do we go from here? And he says, son, if you've done the right thing, he says, you will not be held in any way, irresponsible. He says, this is a responsible way to step up for the things that you have and that you brought here to me. He says, if you have any concerns, he said, you have access to this at any time. If you worry about people touching it, whatever, come put it in my safe in my office, and when you want it, you can come get it and use it and go out and pray. And I did. There's times when I was just sat in from home, sad. My mom sent me, she'd write me letters, all our moms. My dad is just as special to me as my mom is. Don't get me wrong. Dad took good care of me just like my mom did in every way. But Mom sent me something at Christmas. She sent me a recorded tape on it. And then she turned around and had attached on to the end of it, the Temptations Christmas. And I sent back to her and says, Mom, what are you doing? Are you trying to make me commit suicide? I said, you're just trying to put all this sadness into me when I'm way over here, and I can't get in contact with all this stuff. But there's times where I got feeling missing my wife-to-be, my wife, and I just feel like I just needed to get rooted to touch the earth again as we do here. So, I will go get my sage, cedar, and tobacco and go out and simply pray. I would pray for the sick people that I can't be with here at home. There's many things the military bring into contact. My great-grandfather, I was born on his birthday, he died while I was over in Korea, and I'm very special to him. And, that was, and we shared the same day. And I was on the DMZ, so my mom didn't even tell me until after he had been buried, because she knew that would affect me. And she knew that I needed to be sharp and on point up along the DMZ, which is the Indian Head Division again. That's the imagery that comes back into you. But and so there are things that we miss when we're gone. We have loved ones that were lost, and new births that you can't be there with the first steps of new infants and things along those lines. But it's been very important to me going into the military, that a Native person takes along with him his people, his wishes, and his dreams. And never being at the one power I've only missed in my life, those things like that just kind of sit back and kind of burn in your imagery there and mine, and so the culture aspect part of it, the people before I got to the military, you take them with you, you bring them with you when you go, and they're the ones that are here to make you strong. I can spoken with Jules before about how some of her family stood up with my family in acquiring property and things, in the community and stuff. So that's not forgotten. We remember those things, and we love all those things, and we just hold them near and dear. And referring back to some of my brothers and some of the comments going around, it's a good step for a family, for a young man or a young woman to make a decision. And I'm just going to share this with you real quick and see how we can kind of follow things, through. There was a time, there was a young man in my community, and I'm not going to call any names, but there was a young man in my community, and he just seemed to just kind of be floating and not, So I would kind of ease up to him, and in a small community, you can do that. You can turn around and say, "Hey, man, what are you thinking about doing? You thinking about going to college?" I'm kind of not really. I'm thinking about it, but I'm kind of weighing maybe not to. So I said, "Well, you think about it," and I said, "I'll check back with you later on." So the next time I seen him, which is about 2 weeks later, and you might bump into him at church or at the store or whatever. These are how these conversations come about. So I turned around and I said, I seen him and I said, "Have you thought about the college?" "No, I don't think that's going to be for me." Understood. You realize that, college is not for everyone. We all know that. So I said, "Well, have you thought about technical college? Technical college, 2 years. And get that in. If you decide you can transfer, to 4-year college if you want to do it along those lines. Have you thought about that?" He says, "Well, I'm kind of thinking about the community college." I said, "Well, okay, I'll chat with you and we'll see. Just think about it." So he turned around and said, "Okay, So maybe about a week later or 2 weeks later at the store, I can't remember where, I asked him, "Hey, have you thinking about the technical community colleges?" "No, I don't really think I want to do that either." I says, "Well, have you thought about the military?" I said, "The military is a good field to get into." I says, "And you don't have to go 11 Bravo or anything like that. You worry about putting your life on the line." I says, "The military has many opportunities. Lawyers, dental, medical technicians, architects. It's got all those fields that you can get in the military and become those professions that you might want or desire." Well, I'm thinking about it. So I seen him again, and I asked him, I said, "Young man," I said, "have you decided? Are you thinking about the military?" "Well, I'm still thinking about the military." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "If you decide to do that, I'll pick you up and I'll take you to the recruiter. I'll sit there with you. You can talk to him. You can ask your questions, whether you can get insurance for your family, Aldi's, long-term benefits, and some got sign-on benefits, and you can talk with them about all those different aptitudes, and I'll be glad to take you there." He says, "Well, yeah, I think I'm going to do that." So I seen him again. I said, "Well, I'm going. Needless to say that, he did go. He's kind of in there into like a career man now. And he's getting close to the other end of the deal. But my point was, at the end of that, I turned around and I says, "Well, it's time to make a decision. You decide not to go 4-year college, great. You decide not to go technical college, great. You're thinking about the military, not sure, whatever." I says, "Great." I said, "But at this crossroads in life," I says, "while I'm talking to you, and we might be at the store between here, but we're in the crossroads of this community here," I says, "it's time for you to make a move." I says, "You got to make a move this way. If you go college this way, you just figure it's not for you. You know that." I said, "If you go 2-year college this way and decide it's not for you, you at least know that." I said, "If you go military, 2 years, 3 years inside the military, if you decide to go in that, and that's not where you want to go," I said, "you at least know that." I says, "But where you standing here not making any decisions, not going anywhere, you're not making any decisions to go anywhere." So, my word is for the military. I mean, it's been good to me. I wasn't a career man like many of you people, but it did benefit me. I think when I came out of the military, I went for my first job interview, and they looked at my stats and awards and things like that, and it was like, oh, you already got it, you already got it. So, I mean, I retired with public service in the medical field and the prison systems and things along those lines, and which accolades still kind of attributed along those ways, but I based a lot of that onto the military. But when you go in the military, take your family with you, take your ancestry with you, take your people with you, and they will pray for you, and you will pray for them, and you will be good. You will be good.
Okay, I just want to say that statistically, Native Americans, there are more Native Americans that go into the military than any other group of people. And I want to thank you all so much for being a part of this Veteran Circle. As you know, Circle for Native Americans is a sacred, and it's a way to not put any one person ahead of anyone else, which is pretty much our way. And I really appreciate you all being here and respecting the use of the belt, the wampum belt. And I noticed that everybody tend to fold it up nice and neatly. It's almost like you were afraid it was going to hit the ground, and I felt like it was treated like an eagle feather, so I thought that was pretty cool. But I do want to, again, thank you all. Thank you for your service. Everyone appreciates everything you've done for this country and for your people.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to close in prayer if I could.
Yes, okay.
I would like to close in prayer in some of our native language that we learn along the way. And Kueto, Shimalin, Tali Epion, Awasigamen, Melanie, and Lishiak Akpahan. Creator, we thank you for all that you've given us. We thank you for all the gifts that you have given us: food, shelter, clothing, homes. We just like to thank you for all those things. We ask for nothing extra or special. We just ask you to just bless us and give us all the things that we need. Aho.